So today I want to talk about SmartSDR and some of the basic interfacing that we do. And by interfacing, I mean you're allowing your logging program or any other program to communicate with the radio. And there are a couple of ways to do that, but I'll try to keep this fairly straightforward. The first time you start SmartSDR, and you'll notice that, by the way, that each of the icons have a version number on them, so that if you install a new version, you will have a new set of icons with new version numbers. So keep those in mind if you upgrade to a different version or even downgrade to make sure you start the right version number. I tend to delete the ones off my desktop that I don't require anymore. However, you can have many different versions on your computer without any risk of anything going right or wrong. The software will ensure that the radio is updated, and we call those upgrades and downgrades. They're all okay. We do them all the time, and there's no risk to doing an upgrade on a radio or a downgrade. You always have a plan B that you can go back to a previous version. A couple of things here on the SmartSDR main window. Now, we see two radios here. There are a remote radio. We have a 6500 and my local 6600M. You'll notice that when I hover the mouse over the radio, it pops up with this little black box. And well, right now it doesn't mean much, but if you have a licensing issue or a concern, we may ask you for the contents of that little black box, and we've made it fairly easy to deal with. Again, put your mouse over top. If you right-click, it'll say copy radio info to clipboard, and when you do that, you can then paste that into an email, which is pretty handy. So as an example here, if I just bring in a blank text document and we've copied that to the clipboard and I right-click and I hit paste, you'll see that this showed me a lot of key information. It was actually the same thing. It's all in the black box, but it's also one of the items we start with immediately. And if you're opening a support case for any reason, it's probably always a good reason to include this because it tells us a lot of items. So we'll get rid of that. The other thing here in the chooser, you notice that I have a radio that says SmartLink. That's a remote radio, and I have this one that does not say SmartLink. That's a local radio. It's on my LAN, and I can see it. It's right here. I can touch it. It's right beside me, and the one above is about 100 miles away, and so that's what that is about. Look here at the settings before you go any further. If we click on that, you have a choice. On startup, it can auto-connect to the last radio. That's probably what most of you like to do if you only have one radio. Or auto-connect via start SmartLink. So that's pretty handy. And so we're going to start up my 6600, and we'll show you a few things. Again, we want to talk about SmartSDR CAT here and SmartSDR DAX, and they'll be somewhere on your desktop. So we'll connect to my 6600M, and up it pops. And yes, I do a lot of 6-meter and 2-meter work. So in my case, SmartSDR DAX and CAT did not auto start. I have it disabled. For most of you, it will automatically start. And I'm going to open CAT, and CAT is for the communications between the radio and your software programs. Just like any other radio you've had where you've had signal links or CAT control devices, you don't have to buy any hardware. We've got it here in software for you. So we want CAT to connect to this radio, is the one I'm using. And again, don't worry about the SmartLink stuff. That's only if you're doing remote operating. And we can see CAT here, and I'm going to move that over there, and we're going to start DAX. And DAX started in a whole other window. I'll just drag it over here. But you can see it here, and we'll come back to DAX in a moment. So let's talk about CAT. And CAT's the really critical one. And what this is telling us, you're going to see these windows here. They say C, P, O. There's a bunch of different ones. But for most of you, the important one will be C and probably P. So right now this says we have a CAT port, CAT serial RS-232. They're all the same name. They mean the same thing, and they usually use them to control the frequency, the band, or the mode you're on, and a few other settings. The auto switch TX means that if the program, this might be WSJT or DM780 or some other digital program, would like to put the radio into transmit, that it will automatically put the radio in transmit. So I'm going to click on this 14. Let's edit it. This is generally what it looks like. You notice the name is blank. You can put something there, but it is COM14, And this one is related to VFO slice A, and that's VFO slice A, which is this A up here. It's sort of hidden, so let's move that out of the way. That A right there, we're going to go back and edit this, and you'll see that it's A. But look at the choices. Because this is a 4-slice radio, I can have A, B, C, D. If it was a 6700, there'd be 4 more. And if you were on a 63 or a 6400, there would just be A and B. What this means is that this CAT port, this serial port, this RS-232 port, all mean the same thing, are going to send commands or listen to commands from logical slice VFO-A up here. In this case, it's on 6 meters. So you can leave split mode alone, and generally we want, I'll drag that over so you can see the message that pops up. Generally want it to automatically switch to push to talk to this device. So we're going to cancel that because there's nothing to save. So most other programs, or most every program you have, will also require for the radio to go into transmit. Well, you can do that by sending a CAT command, which is a serial command over this port, over COM14. And you can actually see those in Device Manager if you're so inclined, and they actually tell us part of a story as well. So I'll bring up my Device Manager, and we'll go down here, and we see we have ports, and we open the ports, and you'll see there's a 14 right here. Now, under the covers, and you don't need to worry about it, it's actually linked to COM114. Do not delete these, they'll break your ports, but I just leave these alone. We'll come back to that because I'm going to show you what happens next. You can take a screenshot, but you'll probably notice there's a 14, but we don't see a 15. Keep that in mind. So push to talk. I personally like to have a different port for push to talk, so we're going to add a new port, and we'll pull that over here so it's a bit more visible. And this port protocol now becomes push to talk. And that means that the software program, whether it's DM780 or WSJT or something like that, will use this serial port to exert or send the push to talk command to the radio. There's 2 things you need to know when you're setting up your other program. It's going to be COM15 will be the port number you're going to reference, and you can't have duplicate numbers. These ports have to be unique, meaning you'll have many of them, but they all mean something specific, and they all only do one thing. And it's for VFO slice A, which is the same, and RTS, which is request to send. That's an RS-232 port number or designation. Don't worry about it. It just does, though, remember, needs to match the program we're using. The unwritten convention is RTS, is what we use. And active low means when the software, your logging program or WSJT or something like that, pulls that port line or that hardware line low or to 0 volts, then the radio will go into transmit. So we're going to add that, and we'll see that that takes a second. And up here we're going to have, when it's done, we're going to have a COM port 15 show up right there, and that means push to talk. And remember, now we'll bring the Device Manager over, and now you're going to see we have a COM 15 and a COM 115. Don't worry about the hundreds, they're required, they're just there for information. So that's how the ports work. Let's say now I want to be able to work on VFOB. Well, we're going to need another CAT port, so we're going to create CAT again. It's going to be serial, flex VSP, don't bother changing this. And we're going to select B and hit save. And it's going to probably create me a 16. Well, it shows me there a 16. And again, if we look over in Device Manager, you're going to see we have a 16 and a 116. They're actually linked together. And again, guess what now? You want to push to talk? We're going to add CAT push to talk on B and hit save. And that's how the COM port works. What's really beautiful about this part or how Flex Radio did this is it allows you to have multiple programs accessing your radio CAT information at the same time. Now think about that for a minute. Any other radio out there has one, some have two CAT ports that allow programs to access each at the same time. But the way we did it, we can have as many as we want. If I wanted to go back on A here, and I'm going to remove, let's say I don't want this anymore, so let's just get rid of it. We're going to remove it, and just to keep this clean. And we're going to remove this CAT port as well, which is 16, just to keep it clean. And if you're watching Device Manager, while you do this, you will see them disappear. Let's say I wanted another CAT port, because I'm going to use 14 and 15 here for WSJT. But I also want my logging program to talk directly to my radio. And maybe that's Ham Radio Deluxe. So I'm going to add another CAT port on A. So I'm actually going to have two CAT ports talking to the same VFO, the same radio, or the same slice. And now this allows us to have multiple programs using the same radio at the same time. And if I repeat this and do this for push to talk, that'll give you that option as well. And you could do that again and again and again. If you think back, if you had used some of the older programs, like you had a Rig Expert or a Signal Link or something as a CAT device in between, or maybe even the other vendors sort of escape me, you had to disconnect, you had to close down one program because you would have what's called a port contention, because only one program can use a port at the same time. So I'm running HRD, maybe I was running something like RTTY or PSK31 or N1MM for that matter. Yeah, I want to now just use my logging program because it's my day-to-day stuff. I would have to close that down and then bring up my logging program so it could access the hardware USB port that we installed on the radio. So that's the big advantage of a Flex radio, and the way we communicate over a network is this allows us to have multiple programs use the radio all at the same time. And you can make it as complicated, as simple as you like. It's 100% totally up to you. So that's the CAT part. Again, CAT, computer-aided, I think it believes transceiver, computer-aided transceiver control, and for push-to-talk and frequency and mode. There are some other protocols here. You can have OTRSP, which you would do if you were setting up a N1MM or SO2R type station. You can have a wing keyer for CW keying. The setup's the same. Or you can have a TCP port if you're setting up N1MM spots so that they show up on the waterfall. A little beyond what I want to talk about right now, but they are there and they're discussed in the manual. Okay, so that's CAT. So let's talk about DAX. DAX is used to send audio from the radio to your program. Let's focus on maybe WSJT, but any digital sound card program, FL Digi, two-tone, MMTTY, all behave exactly the same way. And the setup is identical for the most part. You have three things to worry about: the audio coming in, the audio going out for the transmitter, and putting the radio in push-to-talk as well. Maybe I guess that's four things. You also have CAT control. So in DAX audio, if we happen to look here, we see that in WSJT, this is if you used it, you'll see that we have an input. This is the audio coming into the radio, the DAX audio from RX1. And that relates to this DAX control screen called RX1. I'll drag this over a bit so the pop-up is visible. And it says it's coming from, my radio at this IP address, the channel's enabled, and the streaming rate. We're moving almost 400 kilobits a second, fair bit of audio. And that's going right into the WJST program. But what is key is that for VFO slice A, that we have DAX, this RX1, and this one are the same thing in a path. If we had another copy of WJST running or some other audio program, say it's FL Digi, we might use RX2 meaning that it's coming from the second VFO. So let's talk about that a little bit in a minute. But this key is that this one, and for most operators, until you get a little carried away and want to do more things, was all you really need for doing one thing at a time. In the TX audio, the TX streaming, the output, this is the output from the software program to the radio, goes here and then over to the radio. There is only one TX port, and you use the same one for all programs because only one program can use it at a time. So from a WSJT perspective, that's what we want to look at. So that's part one. When you're in a digital operating mode, we are generally in DigiU for upper sideband, generally. I'm sure there's a few exceptions. You'll do want to make sure that your bandwidth is about 3 kilohertz, or you can go as high as 6. That's how wide the receiver's hearing for WJST. The reason we want to use U is that in this format there is no EQ or emphasis or anything between the programs and the radio. It's all, as we call, flat. You don't have to worry about hot spots or sweet spots in the bandpass filters that you do with analog radios. Makes that work fairly well. So if you're going to digital modes, you do have to have 3 buttons clicked or checked. So this DAC, let's start on the receiving stream, the RX stream. We're going to focus on 1, and then we walk over here, and you'll see it's DigiU. The DSP you'll leave alone. And this DAX is key. This has to be channel 1. That channel 1 is this channel 1. You'll see if I drop it open, there's 4, and that's because we can have 4 receivers. But generally 1 and 1. You'll notice on my second split down here that my DAX is on 2. Because that goes to a different copy of WJST, but let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. I'll leave that as 2. And if we open up the control box and I hit the little angel here at the bottom, you also need this in DigiU to be set to DAX so that the audio coming into the radio being transmitted, it says, you'll see it says DAX as primary transmit audio source, is where we want to go. You'll notice that the processor's turned off, and because we do not want any audio processing, we're probably going to leave this as normal here and not with, actually you can't even change it in DigiU, which is correct. So that's how DAX, that part of DAX works in what we call the analog world. Down at the bottom, these are for special programs like usually CW Skimmer, etc. For the most part, you can leave it alone and leave it turned off. If I wanted to assign this to a pan adapter, say the second one, it's actually, I think, in display. No, right here, actually in DAX, of course. And I would say channel 2. And you'll notice when I did that it says now 144.174, and it's the sampling rate. Again, that's more of an advanced feature, so don't worry about that. We'll leave them turned off. You can adjust the levels inbound and outbound to your programs with these sliders, and your transmitter gain here to drive the radio from the program. I would make sure, I don't have it set up to transmit, so I apologize, but this level meter will show you the audio level going into the radio while you're in transmitting from your digital program. You want to make sure you keep the peak of that below 0, somewhere about here, -3, -5, and that'll keep everybody really happy. And CAT by looking in the manual, and the manual is quite good, and you can download it from our website. Go to theflexradio.com, look under support, and then downloads, and it's in a couple of places. We've got a great search tool here for finding pretty much everything. But for version 3, here and then documentation, and there's the user guide. If you click on it, it will download. I will bring a copy of it over here so you can see it. it's a very healthy manual. It's written by hams for hams. It's written in English, and it's got pictures in it. And you'll see here on section 8 of the initial setup of CAT and DAX. You'll see the initial setup for DAX, and hopefully with a combination of my video and some pictures here and some stuff that those that have used it have written up, you will find some more instruction on DAX and CAT, and that will help you out a bit. We then get into section 9, which of course is Smart Link, and that is only required if you're doing any sort of remote operation. So that's it for now. Any questions? You know how to reach us. If you have any support issues, please open a support ticket. You can also do that on our website, and the guys will be happy to help you out. Have a wonderful day. Great DX, and that is SmartSDR CAT and SmartSDR DAX.